The victim complex on the right is so strong that even after their ideology motivates someone to go on a killing spree, they claim to be the true victims themselves. Representative Elise Stefanik, member of House Republican leadership, claimed that any attempt to tie her recent anti immigration rhetoric to the motivations of the Buffalo shooter over the weekend was, quote, a new disgusting low for the left. Stefanik then went on to reiterate that she does indeed share concerns about immigration with the alleged mass shooter. 18-year-old Peyton Gendron is accused of opening fire in a supermarket Saturday in a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo, killing 10 people. The murder spree was live streamed and posted to Twitch. Copies of it are still circulating around white nationalist websites online. According to a manifesto alleged to have been written by the shooter, the murders were motivated by belief in the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, a racist and anti Semitic belief that posits white people are being replaced by brown people in a massive demographic shift being orchestrated by an elite cabal of Jews. Conspiracy theory has gained a lot of attention on the right and has already motivated a number of mass killings, including a 2019 mass shooting at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand that killed 51 people. Those murders were also live streamed online. Belief in a great replacement also drove mass shootings at Jewish places of worship in the U.S., one in 2018 at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh that killed 11 people, and another in 2019 in California that left one person dead. Also in 2018, a man killed 23 people in an El Paso, Texas Walmart, also motivated by the racist conspiracy theory. And it's what motivated a bunch of Brooks Brothers Nazis to march in Charlottesville in 2017, chanting how they will not be replaced. The Buffalo shooter also referenced another favorite right-wing media narrative, critical race theory, and he claimed that it too was being pushed by Jews. The modern conservative movement in the U.S. has completely adopted Great Replacement rhetoric, though with a few edits intended to turn some of the loudest anti-Semitic and racist portions of it into mere dog whistles. Instead of Jews orchestrating demographic shifts, it's Democrats who are using immigrants to replace white voters and thus ensure electoral dominance to come. Which, aside from how vile such a belief is, it's also flatly absurd to think Democrats have any coherent strategy to win elections. But I digress. Now, one of the most popular cable news TV hosts, Tucker Carlson, is devoted to pushing a version of Great Replacement theory on his audience. According to an analysis by the New York Times, Tucker has referenced it about 400 times on his show. And just before the shooting, Rep. Elise Stefanik put out an ad accusing Democrats of a permanent election insurrection. Quote, their plan to grant amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants will overthrow our current electorate and create a permanent liberal majority in Washington. After the shooting, as I mentioned, Stefanik blasted Democrats for linking her rhetoric to the attack, but then right after, she sent out a tweet accusing Democrats of pushing for open borders and mass amnesty to give migrants the right to vote. I guess it's fitting that just days after the Buffalo shooting, prominent figures within the conservative movement here in the U.S. plan to attend the CPAC conference in Hungary this week. The event is intended to forge stronger ties with the Hungarian far right, which is currently in power with President Viktor Orban, a man who has campaigned and implemented policy under the pretense that Europeans are being replaced by immigrants. Back in 2019, Orban convened a summit on demography in Budapest and claimed, quote, if Europe is not going to be populated by Europeans in the future and we take this as a given, then we are speaking about an exchange of populations to replace the population of Europeans with others. He added, quote, there are political forces in Europe who want a replacement of population for ideological or other reasons. Those scheduled to attend CPAC Hungary alongside Orban include Tucker Carlson, Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, Candace Owens, and Eduardo Bolsonaro, the son of Brazil's fascist president. The crew is trying to figure out how many more mass shootings it can inspire around the world before the year's out. The right isn't adopting great replacement and CRT rhetoric as merely a cynical ploy to win elections. It's also a blueprint for how it intends to govern, as can be seen by exterminationist policies it pursues at the border and also against LGBTQ youth around the country and the working class in general. Sweden announced its intention to file paperwork this week to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, continuing the military alliance's expansion. Finland is also seeking NATO membership. To the extent that Russia invaded Ukraine to stop NATO's spread eastward, it may have succeeded in that country, but it has utterly failed elsewhere in Europe, upending decades, centuries of neutrality in Scandinavia. The applications have the support of the United States and most other NATO members. Approval requires all members to assent, but so far, one country hasn't done so yet, at least not until it receives concessions, and that's Turkey. And Turkey wants the two countries to turn over some left-wing freedom fighters first so they can be political prisoners in Ankara. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said last week that Turkey wouldn't rubber stamp Sweden and Finland's membership in NATO until security assurances are made regarding members of the Kurdish Workers' Party who reside in Scandinavia. The PKK, as they're known, have been fighting the Turkish government for independence. Erdogan claimed that members of the PKK operate freely in Sweden and that the country is, quote, a guest house for terrorist organizations. NATO officials are confident that Turkey won't actually sink Sweden and Finland's bids, that some sort of deal will be worked out. Perhaps that means some homes will be raided and some folks will be rendered to Turkey. Love that NATO, don't we, folks? And finally, it looks like Donald Trump considered invading Venezuela and had the blessing of Juan Guaido, the US-backed regime change figurehead, who is still recognized by President Biden as Venezuela's rightful leader. This is according to the book released last week by Mark Esper, the Raytheon lobbyist who served as Trump's defense secretary in 2019 and 2020. Esper's book claims that in February 2020, Trump met with Guaido and other Venezuelan opposition leaders, and that Guaido was willing to support an invasion of Venezuela using U.S.-trained mercenaries, but, quote, was more interested in having U.S. troops directly invade instead. Trump White House and the Venezuelan opposition leaders also discussed a plot in vague terms, which appears to have been a reference to the absurd May 2020 plot led by Canadian mercenary Jordan Goudreau to capture or kill Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro with just 60 men. Last October, Vice News revealed that Guaido was involved in the early stages of planning that scheme, which failed spectacularly with 6 of the mercenaries killed and 17 captured, as Goudreau live tweeted it from the safety of Florida. Goudreau hasn't appeared in public since then, but he has sued a former aide to Guaido named J.J. Rendon over an alleged failure to pay his band of mercenaries a $1.5 million retainer, on top of a promise of $200 million secured by Venezuelan oil if the plot had succeeded. As for Esper, he claimed, quote, he was not aware that the plans discussed in the meeting were actually an assassination plot against Maduro. That's per Venezuela analysis. Former defense secretary said he discussed the matter with CIA Director Gina Haspel and said that Haspel didn't know about the plan, but those claims don't appear to hold up to the Vice reporting on the matter. And this has all essentially been legitimized by President Biden. Earlier this year, there were signs that he was considering casting Guaido aside and normalizing ties with the Venezuelan government. When Russia invaded Ukraine and energy prices spiked, the White House reached out to President Maduro to discuss an end to sanctions on the Venezuelan oil industry. But those talks quickly collapsed after, quote, an outcry from Republican lawmakers and some of Biden's fellow Democrats, as Reuters noted. And now Biden won't even invite Venezuela to a summit of the Americas, nor will he invite Nicaragua or Cuba, just more or less picking up where Trump left off on a dangerous, failed Latin American foreign policy. There was some good news to mention, though. On Monday, it was reported that the Biden administration would loosen restrictions on travel to Cuba and on remittances sent to the island from the United States. But this is only a partial reversal of Trump's harshest policies toward Cuba while keeping the basic framework in place. We'll have more on U.S. imperialism in other parts of the world later in the show. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.